Hey guys, tonight we're stepping into a world where work felt different, where jobs had rhythm and ritual, where the man who delivered your milk knew your family by name, and the woman at the switchboard connected more than just phone calls. We're talking about 1950s America, specifically. The jobs that once stitched communities together, but have quietly disappeared from the fabric of daily life. The elevator operator who greeted you each morning, the soda jerk who knew exactly how you liked your cherry Coke, the TV repairman who showed up at your door with a toolbox and somehow always fixed what was broken. Before we step back in time, take a second to like the video and subscribe if you enjoy these journeys into the past. Thank you for suggesting this topic. You always send me the best ideas. We're now on Spotify, so check the description if you'd like to listen there. Drop a comment telling me where you're watching from and what time it is. I know someone out there is listening at 10:30 at night, wrapped in a blanket, pretending this counts as productivity. Now dim the lights, switch on a fan for that soft white noise, wiggle down under your covers, and get comfortable. Really comfortable. Like you're not moving for the next hour unless there is an actual emergency. Because tonight we're exploring a world where work was personal, where your job connected you to your neighbours in ways that felt almost like family. A world where the drugstore soda fountain was a gathering place, where the gas station attendant washed your windshield without being asked, and where the neighbourhood watch repairman could tell time by the rhythm of his own hands. Have you ever wondered what it felt like to walk into a shop and be greeted by someone who remembered your last visit? What did the inside of a cobbler's workshop smell like? All leather and polish and patience. How many conversations happened across lunch counters that no longer exist? What was it like when your job was not just about earning money, but about being woven into the daily life of your community? Did the milkman ever get tired of waking up before dawn? Or did the quiet streets feel like his alone? And more importantly, could you survive a single day doing work that required you to show up, be seen, and connect with people face to face every single shift? Well, congratulations. You've just woken up in 1955. The coffee is already on. Someone down the street is mowing their lawn. The milkman has already come and gone, and the day is just beginning. Let's start with the milkman, because before the sun rises, before the neighbourhood stirs, he's already moving quietly through the streets with glass bottles clinking softly in their metal carrier. You do not see him, but you hear him. The gentle rattle of milk bottles being set on doorsteps, the soft hum of his truck idling at the curb, the careful footsteps of a man who has learned to walk without waking. Anyone. By the time you shuffle to your front door in your bathrobe, the milk is already there, cold and fresh, beads of condensation gathering on the glass like tiny promises that the day has begun properly. He knows your family, not just your address, but your rhythm. He knows when your mother needs an extra quart because company is coming. He knows which house prefers whole milk and which one orders the cream-top bottles for Sunday pancakes. He leaves a receipt in the empty bottles, and your mother settles the bill at the end of the week, sometimes leaving him a tip folded into the note she tucks under the bottle. His route begins at 4 in the morning, when the streets are still dark and the only other souls awake are the bakers and the night shift workers heading home. He drives slowly, his headlights cutting through the pre-dawn fog, his truck rattling gently over the pavement. At each house he knows exactly how many steps from the curb to the porch which dogs bark and which ones just watch him pass, which front steps creak, and which mailboxes lean slightly to the left. The milk comes from local dairies, delivered to him in the early hours, still cold from the refrigerated trucks. The bottles are heavy, solid, reusable, and they bear the name of the dairy embossed into the glass. Your mother rinses them out and leaves them on the porch for him to collect, and he carries them back to the truck in the same wire carrier. A small closed loop of commerce and trust that happens mostly in silence. In winter, he wears gloves and a heavy coat, his breath visible in the cold air, and sometimes the cream at the top of the bottle freezes, pushing the cardboard cap up like a tiny hat. In summer he moves faster, trying to finish his route before the heat of the day, and sometimes he pauses to wipe his forehead with a handkerchief, taking a moment to catch his breath before moving on. There is something deeply comforting about his presence, about knowing that someone is out there in the quiet hours, making sure your family has what it needs. He's part of the rhythm of the neighbourhood, as reliable as the sunrise, as steady as the seasons. Children sometimes wake early just to catch a glimpse of him, peering through curtains to watch him set the bottles down with care, and he waves when he sees them, a small acknowledgement that they share this secret, quiet time. But by the 1960s, refrigerators are better, supermarkets are everywhere, and people start buying their milk in paper cartons that they carry home themselves. The milkman's route grows shorter, houses drop off one by one, and eventually the truck stops coming altogether, and the doorstep where the bottles once sat each morning is just a doorstep again, empty, waiting for nothing in particular. The job disappears not with drama, but with a quiet fade, the way so many things do when the world decides it no longer needs them. Now it is Saturday afternoon, and you push through the door of the drugstore soda fountain, where the air smells like vanilla syrup, cherry cola, and the faint tang of disinfectant wiped across the marble counter. The soda jerk looks up from polishing a glass, greets you by name, and asks if you want the usual, even though the usual changes depending on your mood, and he somehow always knows which mood you're in. He works behind the counter with the practiced ease of someone who has scooped 1,000 ice cream cones and mixed 1,000 floats, his movements quick and sure, his white paper hat sitting at a jaunty angle that suggests he takes his work seriously, but not too seriously. He's young, probably still in high school or just out of it, and this job is his entry into the working world. He wears a white apron over his shirt and slacks, and his hands are always busy, wiping down the counter, restocking the straw dispenser, adjusting the syrup pumps that line the back wall like a sweet, sticky organ. He knows how to make a phosphate, a malt, an egg cream, drinks with names that sound like they belong to another century, which in a way they do. You slide onto one of the round vinyl stools that spin if you push off just right, and he leans forward on the counter, ready to take your order. A cherry Coke, you say, and he nods, already reaching for a glass. He fills it with ice, pumps in the cherry syrup with 2 quick pulls of the lever, then holds the glass under the soda tap, letting the carbonated water hiss and fizz as it mixes with the syrup, turning it a deep, beautiful red. He tops it with a little extra fizz, slides it across the counter, and drops in a straw and a long-handled spoon. The soda fountain is a gathering place, especially for teenagers who do not have many other places to gather. They come in after school, after the movies, after football games, and they sit at the counter or crowd into the booths, talking, laughing, flirting, while the soda jerk works behind the counter, keeping up with the orders, occasionally joining in the conversation when there is a lull. He makes it look easy, but it is not. The ice cream is kept in deep metal tubs, and scooping it requires strength, especially when it has been in the freezer too long and hardens into something resembling concrete. This syrup pumps sometimes stick, the soda tap sometimes sprays everywhere, and the blender used for milkshakes is loud and temperamental and requires constant cleaning. But he manages it all with good humour, joking with the customers, teasing the regulars, flirting mildly with the girls who giggle when he hands them their sundaes. There is an art to what he does, even if people do not always recognise it. The perfect milkshake has a specific thickness, not too thick to drink through a straw, but not so thin it is just flavoured milk. A banana split requires balance, proportion, an understanding of how the flavours work together. Even something as simple as a Coke float has a technique. You add the ice, Cream after the soda, not before, or it fizzes over the edge and makes a mess. But as the 1950s turn into the 1960s, the drugstore soda fountain begins to fade. Fast food restaurants open, drive-ins become more popular, and teenagers find other places to spend their time. The soda jerk, once a fixture of American adolescence, becomes a relic, a memory, a character from a simpler time that people talk about with a wistful shake of their heads. You step into the department store downtown, and the elevator operator greets you with a polite nod, his uniform pressed and pristine, his white gloves holding the brass lever that controls your ascent. He calls out each floor with the rhythm of someone who has said these words so many times they have become a kind of music. Ladies' wear, second floor, housewares, third floor. You ride in silence, or sometimes in quiet conversation, and there is something strangely comforting about having another person guide you up and down, through the building, as though even the simplest journey requires a human touch. His uniform is important. It is usually dark, navy or black, with brass buttons polished to a shine, and sometimes there is a small cap that sits at a precise angle on his head. The white gloves are not just for show, they keep his hands clean as he operates the lever and opens and closes the heavy metal gate that accordion folds across the entrance. He stands beside the control panel, one hand on the lever, the other resting at his side, his posture straight, his expression pleasant but professional. The elevator itself is a small room, ornate in the way things used to be ornate, with brass fixtures, wood panelling, and sometimes a small cushioned bench along the back wall for those who need to sit. It moves slowly by modern standards, rising and descending with a mechanical hum and the occasional lurch that makes first-time riders grab for the handrail. But the operator knows its quirks, knows exactly when to slow the lever to bring the car level with each floor, knows how to coax it into smooth stops that barely jar the passengers. He talks as he works, or rather, he narrates. Going up, third floor, menswear and sporting goods. Watch your step, please. His voice is calm, almost soothing, and it fills the small space with a sense of order and care. He opens the gate when you reach your floor, holds it while you exit, then closes it again and continues on, carrying other passengers to other destinations. There is something intimate about riding in an elevator with a stranger whose job is to be there with you. You make small talk sometimes about the weather, about the crowds, about the sales happening on the fourth floor. He responds politely, always polite, always appropriate, and you realize that he has these brief conversations dozens of times a day with hundreds of people, and yet he makes each one feel like it matters. He also serves as a guide, a helper, an informal concierge. People ask him where to find things, which floor has the toy department, whether the restaurant on the top floor is open for lunch. He knows the answers, all of them, because he has been riding this elevator for years, moving through the same building, seeing the same departments, overhearing the same questions. He becomes, in a way, the heart of the store, the person who keeps it moving, literally and figuratively. But progress does not care about charm. By the 1960s, automatic elevators are becoming standard push-button systems that do not require an operator, that allow passengers to control their own journey. The elevator operator, once essential, becomes redundant. The job disappears floor by floor, store by store, until one day the elevator runs on its own, efficient and silent and entirely without personality. You pull into the service station, and before you can even unbuckle your seatbelt, the attendant is at your window smiling, asking how much fuel you need and whether you would like him to check the oil. He wipes your windshield without being asked, checks your tyre pressure, and makes small talk about the weather, about the neighbourhood, about the last time you stopped by. You do not pump your own gas because that is his job, and he does it with a kind of pride that suggests service is not something to be rushed or resented, but something worth doing well. He wears a uniform, usually a shirt with his name stitched above the pocket, sometimes a cap with the gas station logo, and his hands are perpetually stained with grease and oil, the marks of his trade. He moves with efficiency, unscrewing your gas cap, inserting the nozzle, setting the pump, and while it runs, he does not stand idle. He lifts the hood, checks the oil with a dipstick, examines the belts and hoses, peers at the battery terminals, looking for anything that might need attention. "Fill it up," he asks, and you nod, and he pumps until the tank is full, then rounds. The numbers up or down to the nearest dollar because exact change is easier for everyone. He replaces the gas cap, closes the hood, and moves to the windshield, spraying it with cleaner and wiping it down with long, smooth strokes, clearing away the bugs, the dust, the film of road grime that has accumulated since your last visit. There is a rhythm to his work, a choreography that comes from doing the same tasks over and over until they become second nature. He can check 4 tyres in under a minute, top off your oil without spilling a drop, clean your windshield while mentally calculating what you owe. And all the while he talks, friendly but not intrusive, asking about your family, mentioning that your inspection sticker is about to expire, suggesting that your wiper blades might need replacing before winter comes. The service station itself is a neighbourhood fixture, a place you visit once a week or more, and the attendant becomes a familiar face, someone you trust with your car, with your safety. He knows your vehicle, remembers that your passenger door sticks a little, that your engine has been making a funny noise, that you mentioned your son is learning to drive. This is not just a transaction. It is a relationship, small but real, built on repeated interactions and mutual respect. Inside the station, there is usually a small office with a cash register, a calendar on the wall, a coffee pot that is always on, and a mechanic's bay where more serious repairs are done. The attendant handles the pumps, but he also sells you quarts of oil, replaces your windshield wipers, patches a tyre that has picked up a nail. He is part salesman, part mechanic, part neighbour, and he takes all of these roles seriously. But self-service is coming. By the late 1960s and into the 70s, gas stations begin offering pumps where you fill your own tank, and because it is cheaper, people start choosing that option. The attendant's job begins to shrink, then disappear, until full-service stations become rare, nostalgic, quaint. You pump your own gas now, and no one checks your oil, no one cleans your windshield, and the interaction is reduced to swiping a card and driving away, efficient and impersonal, and entirely without warmth. Somewhere in a quiet office building downtown, the switchboard operator sits before a panel of blinking lights and tangled cords, her head set snug against her ear, her hands moving with the speed and precision of a pianist. She connects call after call, plugging and unplugging cords with practiced efficiency, her voice calm and courteous as she asks, "Number, please?" She knows the voices of regular callers, remembers who is trying to reach whom, and sometimes, when the moment allows, she offers a word of comfort or congratulation, because she's not just connecting wires, she's connecting lives. The switchboard itself is a marvel of early 20th century technology, a wall of jacks and plugs and patch cords, each one corresponding to a phone line. When a call comes in, a light blinks on the board, and she plugs a cord into that jack, answers, asks for the number, then plugs the other end of the cord into the corresponding outgoing line, completing the circuit. It looks complicated, and it is, but she's been doing this for years, and her hands move almost without thought, pulling and pushing and connecting with a rhythm that never falters. She wears a headset that covers one ear, leaving the other free so she can hear what is happening around her, though most of the time the room is quiet except for the murmur of other operators and the soft click and buzz of the switchboard itself. She speaks clearly, enunciating each word, her tone always pleasant, always professional, even when the caller is rude or impatient or confused. The The job requires patience, focus, and a good memory. She needs to remember numbers, recognize voices, keep track of multiple calls at once, and do it all without making mistakes. A wrong connection means someone does not get their call, which in the 1950s, when the telephone is still a relatively new and important technology, is a serious error. So she's careful, methodical, double-checking each connection before moving on to the next. She also becomes, in a way, a confidant. She hears snippets of conversations, urgent calls to doctors, tearful calls to faraway relatives, business deals being made, romances being kindled. She does not listen intentionally, but she cannot help overhearing, and over time, she comes to know the rhythms of the people she serves, who calls whom, who is always in a hurry, who takes their time. There is a kind of intimacy in this work, even though she rarely meets the people she helps. They rely on her, trust her to connect them quickly and correctly, and she takes that responsibility seriously. When someone thanks her, which does not happen often but does happen, she feels a quiet pride, a sense that what she does matters, that she is part of the invisible web that holds the community together. But automation is coming. By the late 1950s, automatic switching systems are being installed, systems that allow callers to dial directly without needing an operator. The technology is faster, cheaper, and it does not require salaries or training or benefits. One by one, switchboard operators are let go, their skills rendered obsolete by machines that can do in seconds what took them minutes. The job disappears, and with it, a human voice that once greeted you every time you needed to make a call. Your television has been acting strange all week. The picture rolling, the sound crackling, the whole contraption buzzing ominously like it might explode. So you call the TV repairman, and he arrives at your door the next afternoon with a leather toolbox and a calm, knowing expression. He kneels before the set, removes the back panel, and peers into the glowing maze of vacuum tubes and wires as though diagnosing a patient. He works in near silence, occasionally muttering to himself, replacing a tube here, adjusting a wire there, and when he finishes, the picture is sharp, the sound is clear, and you feel a strange gratitude for this man who understands machines in ways you never will. Television sets in the 1950s are not simple appliances. They are complex pieces of machinery filled with vacuum tubes that glow orange when the set is on, capacitors that hold dangerous charges even when it's unplugged, and circuits so intricate that only someone with specialized training can hope to understand them. When something goes wrong, and something always goes wrong, you cannot just replace the television. They're too expensive for that. So you call the repairman. He arrives in a van filled with tools, spare parts, and a collection of vacuum tubes in small boxes, each one labelled with a code that means nothing to you but everything to him. He sets his toolbox down beside the television, plugs in a small testing device, and begins his examination. He taps on tubes to see if they are loose, checks connections with a multimeter, listens to the hum of the transformer, and slowly narrows down the problem. The repair itself is part science, part intuition. He has done this so many times that he can often diagnose the issue just by listening to the symptoms you describe. Picture rolls? Probably a vertical hold problem. Sound cuts out. Could be a loose connection or a failing tube. No picture at all. Might be the cathode ray tube, which is a serious and expensive repair, the kind that makes people consider whether it is worth fixing or time to buy a new set. He works efficiently, his hands steady, his focus complete. He removes a suspect tube, tests it with a handheld checker, and confirms that it is dead. He rummages through his toolbox, finds the replacement, and slides it into place with a satisfying click. He replaces the back panel, turns the set on, and watches as the picture blooms into clarity, the sound crisp and clean. He adjusts the fine-tuning knobs, making small tweaks until everything is perfect, then stands back and nods with satisfaction. You pay him from the household money, and he writes you a receipt, tears it from a small pad, and hands it to you before packing up his tools. He reminds you to call if the problem comes back, though it usually does not, and he leaves, moving on to the next house, the next broken television, the next family grateful for his skill. There is something comforting about having someone who can fix things, who understands the technology that has invaded your home, who can restore order when the picture goes haywire. He's a kind of modern wizard, working with tools and knowledge that seem almost magical to the average person, and his presence is reassuring in a world that is becoming more and more dependent on machines. But televisions are changing. By the 1960s and 70s, they are becoming more reliable, more solid state, less dependent on fragile vacuum tubes. And when they do break, they are often cheaper to replace than to repair. The TV repairman's business slows, his skills become less necessary, and eventually the job fades away, replaced by a world where electronics are disposable, where fixing things is rarer than throwing them away. There is a knock at your door, and when you open it, a man in a neat suit stands on your porch, a sample case in one hand and a hopeful smile on his face. He's selling encyclopedias, or vacuum cleaners, or brushes, or insurance, and he launches into his pitch with the confidence of someone who's done this 1,000 times, his words smooth and practiced, his gestures animated. You let him talk because that is what people do, and even if you do not buy anything, there is something almost theatrical about the whole exchange, a small human drama played out on your front step. He is a salesman, and in the 1950s and 50s, door-to-door sales are a legitimate, respected way to make a living. Companies train their salesmen extensively, teaching them how to approach a house, how to read a customer, how to handle objections, how to close a deal. The best salesmen are part psychologist, part performer, able to build rapport quickly, to make you feel like they understand your needs, your dreams, your fears. His sample case is heavy, filled with products or catalogues or brochures, and he sets it down on your porch with a practiced motion, flipping it open to reveal whatever he is selling. If it is encyclopedias, he will pull out a volume, flip through the pages, point out the beautiful illustrations, the wealth of knowledge contained within. If it is a vacuum cleaner, he might ask to demonstrate it right there in your living room, showing you how much dirt it can pull from your carpet, dirt you did not even know was there. If it is brushes, he will have a brush for every conceivable purpose, and he will explain each one with enthusiasm as though these brushes might change your life. He talks and talks and talks, filling the silence with words, with promises, with visions of a better, cleaner, more informed life. He is charming, or at least trying to be, and there is something endearing about his effort, his willingness to stand on your porch and make his pitch, knowing that most people will say no, but hoping that you might be the one who says yes. Your mother usually listens politely, sometimes invites him in for a glass of water, especially if it is a hot day, and he accepts gratefully, using the moment to build more rapport, to ask about your family, to compliment the home, to find some common ground. And sometimes, just sometimes, she buys something, not because she necessarily needs it, but because she admires his persistence, his work ethic, the fact that he is out here, day after day, trying to make a living. But the world is changing. Shopping malls are opening, supermarkets are expanding, and people are spending less time at home during the day. The door-to-door salesman finds fewer people answering their doors, and those who do are less patient, less willing to listen. By the 1960s, the job is fading, and by the 70s, it is almost gone. A relic of a time when commerce was more personal, more human, conducted not in stores but on doorsteps, one conversation at a time. You take your worn shoes to the cobbler, whose shop sits tucked between the bakery and the hardware store, and the moment you step inside, you're surrounded by the smell of leather, shoe polish, and the faint metallic tang of his tools. He examines your shoes with the careful attention of a doctor inspecting an injury, turning them over in his hands, pressing his thumb against the sole, nodding thoughtfully. He tells you they can be saved, that he will resolve them, restitch the lining, make them good as new, and you leave them there, knowing they are in capable hands. The cobbler's shop is small, cluttered, and utterly functional. Shoes in various stages of repair line the shelves along the walls, each pair tagged with a name and a ticket number. His workbench is covered with tools, hammers, awls, knives, and a heavy cast-iron shoe, last that he uses to shape and form the leather. A sewing machine, old and sturdy, sits in one corner, and the smell of leather and glue permeates everything. He works with his hands, and those hands are strong, calloused, stained with dye and polish. He has been doing this for decades, learned the trade from his father, who learned it from his father, and there is a kind of quiet pride in that continuity, in carrying on work that has been done the same way for generations. He does not rush, because good work takes time, and his customers understand that, expect it even. When he works on your shoes, he strips away the old sole, carefully removing the stitches, peeling away the worn leather, inspecting the upper for any damage. He selects new leather from his stock, cuts it to size, shapes it over the last, and stitches it into place with strong waxed thread, each stitch tight and even. He trims the edges, sands them smooth, applies polish, and buffs them until they shine. When he's finished, the shoes look almost new, and they will last for years more, a testament to his skill. There is something deeply satisfying about repair, about taking something worn and broken and making it whole again. In a world that is beginning to embrace disposability, the cobbler represents an older ethic, one that values durability, craftsmanship, the idea that things are worth fixing. Your father brings his work boots here, your mother brings her good church shoes, and the cobbler fixes them all, extending their life, saving his customers money, and in doing so he becomes a valued part of the community. But fashion is changing, and so is manufacturing. Shoes are becoming cheaper, made with glued soles instead of stitched ones, designed to be worn for a season and then discarded. The cost of repair begins to approach the cost of buying new, and people start making a different choice. The cobbler's shop grows quieter, his workbench less crowded, until one day he retires, and the shop closes, and the space is rented to someone selling something newer, something more disposable, something that does not require the kind of skill and patience that he spent a lifetime perfecting. The telegram delivery boy pedals his bicycle through the neighbourhood, a canvas bag slung across his shoulder, his uniform crisp despite the summer heat. He knows which houses are expecting good news, and which ones might be bracing for something harder, and he delivers each telegram with quiet professionalism, handing over the yellow envelope and waiting politely while you read it, just in case there is a reply to send back. His job is small but important, a link in a chain of communication that stretches across cities and states, and he takes it seriously. He is young, usually a teenager, and this is often his first real job, his entry into the world of work and responsibility. He wears a uniform provided by the telegraph company, usually a blue jacket with brass buttons and a cap with a badge, and he takes pride in keeping it clean and pressed, understanding that he represents the company, that his appearance matters. His bicycle is his most important tool, and he maintains it carefully, oiling the chain, checking the tyres, making sure the basket mounted on the handlebars is secure enough to hold his canvas bag. He knows every street in his territory, every shortcut, every house number, and he prides himself on being fast, on delivering telegrams as quickly as possible, because he knows that time matters, that people are waiting. The telegrams themselves come in yellow envelopes, sealed and addressed, and he carries them in his bag, arranged in the order he will deliver them. Some are routine, birthday greetings, congratulations, reminders, but others are urgent. News of illness, death, emergency, and he can usually tell by the way the clerk at the telegraph office hands it to him, by the look in their eye, by the address, whether this is going to be an easy delivery or a hard one. When he arrives at a house, he rings the bell or knocks, and when the door opens, he says, "Telegram," and hands over the envelope. Sometimes people tip him a nickel or a dime, and he thanks them and moves on. Sometimes they open it right there, and he sees the reaction, joy or relief, or sometimes tears, and in those moments he feels the weight of what he does, the responsibility of being the one who brings news, good or bad, into people's lives. He also takes return messages, standing politely on the porch while someone writes out a reply, dictating it to him so he can write it down in careful block letters on a form he carries for that purpose. He rides back to the telegraph office, hands in, the message, and it is sent, a miracle of technology that most people take for granted but that still feels a little magical to him. But the telegram is already fading by the 1950s. Long-distance phone calls are becoming more affordable, more reliable, and people start choosing to call instead of sending a wire. By the 1960s, the telegram delivery boy is a rarity, and by the 70s, the job is almost entirely gone, replaced by a world where communication is instant, where news travels at the speed of sound, and where no one needs a boy on a bicycle to carry words from place to place. Before refrigerators became common, the iceman made his rounds, his truck loaded with heavy blocks of ice wrapped in burlap, his back strong from years of lifting and carrying. He climbs your front steps with a block balanced on his shoulder, uses his ice pick to chip it down to the right size, and slides it into your ice box with the ease of someone who has done this 10,000 times. The ice drips onto your kitchen floor, leaving small puddles that evaporate quickly in the summer warmth, and you thank him as he tips his cap and moves on to the next house. The iceman is a figure of strength and reliability, his work demanding both physical power and precise timing. Ice melts, and in the summer it melts fast, which means he has to move quickly, delivering to dozens of homes before the load in his truck turns into a puddle. He starts early, often before dawn, picking up his load from the ice plant where enormous blocks are cut and stored in insulated warehouses, and he works through the morning racing against the heat. Each block weighs anywhere from 25 to 50 pounds, and he carries them with tongs or balanced on his shoulder, his movements efficient, his strength impressive. Children watch from windows as he approaches, fascinated by the spectacle of a man carrying something so heavy, so cold, so essential. Sometimes he chips off small pieces and gives them to the kids who suck on the ice like candy, grateful for the cold relief on a hot day. Your mother leaves a card in the window, a sign that tells him how much ice she needs today, and he knows to look for it, adjusting his delivery accordingly. He opens the door, often without knocking because that is the custom, and carries the ice to the kitchen, where the icebox waits, a wooden cabinet lined with metal, with a compartment at the top for the ice, and shelves below for food. He opens it, removes the old smaller block if there is one, and slides the new block into place, fitting it snugly so it will last as long as possible. The icebox is not as convenient as a refrigerator, but it works, keeping food cold, preserving milk and meat and leftovers, and your mother has learned how to manage it, how to arrange things so the coldest items are closest to the ice, how to catch the meltwater in the drip pan underneath, how to judge when it is time to order more ice. But electric refrigerators are becoming more common, more affordable, and by the mid-1950s most families are making the switch. The icebox is emptied, hauled away, replaced by a gleaming white refrigerator that hums quietly in the corner, never melting, never needing refills. The iceman's route grows shorter, his customers fewer, and eventually he finds other work because the job that sustained him, that gave him purpose and income, is simply no longer needed in a world that has moved on. The fuller brush man arrives unannounced but always welcome, his sample case filled with brushes for every conceivable purpose. Scrubbing floors, cleaning windows, grooming hair, polishing shoes. He demonstrates each one with enthusiasm, showing you how the bristles are designed, how the handle fits your grip, how this particular brush will solve a problem you did not know you had. Your mother usually buys something, not because she needs it, but because his pitch is so earnest, so genuine, that turning him away feels unkind. He is a master of the soft sell, never pushy, never aggressive, just friendly and persistent in a way that feels more like a conversation than a transaction. He knows that if he can get inside your house, if your mother will let him demonstrate his products, his chances of making a sale increase dramatically. So he is polite, respectful, always mindful of not overstaying his welcome, but equally determined to show you what he has brought. His case is heavy, packed with dozens of brushes, each one nestled into its own compartment, and he knows where every single one is without looking. He pulls them out one by one, his hands moving with practiced ease, his voice steady as he explains the features. This one has boar bristles, perfect for scrubbing without scratching. This one has a long handle, so you can reach high windows without a ladder. This one is small enough to clean between the keys of a typewriter, a detail that makes your mother nod, with interest because her typewriter is always getting dusty. He offers to demonstrate and your mother agrees, curious or polite or both, and he kneels on the kitchen floor, takes out a scrub brush and works it across a corner that has not been cleaned in a while. The dirt comes up easily, the bristles doing exactly what he promised they would do, and your mother leans in, impressed despite herself. He stands, hands her the brush, and suggests she try it, and she does. And the feel of it in her hand, the way it works, convinces her more than any words could. The fuller brushman also carries a catalogue, thick and filled with illustrations of products he does not have in his case, but can order for you, and he flips through it slowly, pointing out items that might be useful, listening when your mother mentions a need, then finding something in the catalogue that addresses it. He is a good listener, and that is part of his skill, understanding what people want before they fully realise it, themselves. He writes up the order on a carbon copy form, tears off your copy, and tucks his into a worn leather portfolio. He promises delivery within 2 weeks, and he is always reliable, always has time, because his reputation depends on it, and in door-to-door sales, reputation is everything. Your mother pays him, sometimes in cash, sometimes writing a cheque, and he thanks her, tips his hat, and heads to the next house, his case a little lighter, his spirits high. But the world is changing, and people are busier, less likely to answer their doors, less patient with salesmen who arrive uninvited. Discount stores are opening, places where you can buy cleaning supplies cheaply, without the personal touch, but also without the obligation. The fuller brushman's territory grows harder to work. His sales decline, and by the 1960s the company shifts away from door-to-door sales, and the man with the sample case, once a familiar figure in every neighbourhood, becomes a memory, a relic of a time when commerce was personal and patience was plentiful. You step into the cool darkness of the movie theatre, and the usher greets you with a flashlight and a courteous nod, guiding you down the aisle to your seat with the precision of someone who knows every row, every number, every slight incline in the floor. He wears a uniform that makes him look vaguely official, and he takes his job seriously, shushing loud talkers, escorting latecomers, and making sure everyone has a good view of the screen. He is part of the experience, a quiet guardian of the movie-going ritual. His uniform is usually a dark jacket with brass buttons, sometimes with epaulets on the shoulders, and a bow tie that gives him an air of formality. He carries a flashlight with a red filter so the beam does not disturb the audience, and he uses it sparingly, directing you with small movements, leading you through the darkness with the confidence of someone who could navigate this theatre blindfolded. The theatre itself is grand, built in an era when movies were events, not casual entertainment. The lobby gleams with polished brass and marble. The auditorium is adorned with ornate plaster moulding, and thick velvet curtains hang before the screen, waiting to be drawn back when the feature begins. The usher is part of this grandeur, a human element that makes the experience feel special, attended to, important. He knows the layout perfectly, knows which seats have the best view, which ones are near the aisle for easy exits, which ones are too close to the speakers and should be avoided. He leads you to your seat, waits while you settle in, and then moves back up the aisle, his flashlight beam sweeping gently across the floor, watching for latecomers, for people who need assistance, for anyone causing a disturbance. During the show, he stands at the back or patrols the aisles quietly, his presence subtle but felt. If someone talks too loudly, he approaches and whispers a polite reminder. If children are running in the aisles, he intercepts them gently but firmly, guiding them back to their seats. If someone becomes ill or needs help, he is there immediately, trained to handle emergencies, to keep the theatre safe and orderly. Between shows, he works quickly, moving through the rows with a trash bag, picking up discarded popcorn boxes, candy wrappers, empty soda cups. He straightens the seats, checks for lost items, makes sure everything is ready for the next audience. It is repetitive work, unglamorous, but he does it with care, understanding that his efforts contribute to the experience, that a clean, well-maintained theatre makes people happy, makes them want to come back. He also handles ticketing sometimes, tearing stubs at the entrance, directing people toward the correct auditorium, answering questions about show times and coming attractions. He is friendly, helpful, a face people recognize, especially regulars who come every week, and over time he learns their preferences, greets them by name, makes them feel like valued guests rather than just customers. But the movie theatre is changing. Multiplexes are on the horizon, places where automation and cost-cutting will replace personal service. The uniformed usher, once essential, will become a rarity, and eventually moviegoers will find their own seats in the dark, fumbling with their phones for light, and the ritual of being guided to your seat by someone who cares will fade into memory, another small human touch lost to efficiency. At the bowling alley, behind the lanes, the pinsetters work in cramped spaces, resetting pins by hand after every roll, ducking out of the way as balls come hurtling down the wood. It is loud, repetitive, sometimes dangerous work, and yet they do it with a kind of resigned efficiency, because someone has to, and the job pays. You do not see them often, but you hear them, the clatter of pins being lifted and arranged, the occasional shout when someone narrowly avoids getting hit, and you feel a quiet respect for the people who make your leisure possible. The pinsetter works in the pit, a narrow area behind the lanes where the pins are stored and reset. It is hot back there, especially in summer, and the air smells like wood, oil, and sweat. The noise is constant. The thunder of bowling balls, the crash of pins, the mechanical sounds of the ball return, all of it echoing in the confined space until it becomes a kind of roar that you learn to tune out or go mad. When a ball strikes the pins, they scatter, and the pinsetter moves quickly, gathering them up, checking each one for damage, replacing any that are cracked or splintered. Then he places them carefully on the pin deck, arranging them in the triangular formation, making sure they are straight, that the spacing is correct, that everything is ready for the next roll. He does this in seconds, his movements practiced, efficient, and then he jumps back, pressing himself against the wall as the next ball comes barreling down the lane. It requires agility, timing, and a certain amount of courage, because the balls are heavy, they move fast, and if you're not paying attention, if you misjudge the timing, you can get hurt. There are stories, passed around among pinsetters, of close calls, of bruised shins, of balls that came through faster than expected, and everyone who works the pit has at least one scar, one story, one moment when they almost got hit. The job is usually done by teenagers, young men who need money and are willing to do work that is physically demanding and slightly dangerous. They work nights and weekends, when the bowling alley is busiest, and they work in teams, each one responsible for several lanes, moving back and forth, resetting pins, keeping the games moving. There is a kind of camaraderie among them, a shared understanding of what the work entails, and they look out for each other, shouting warnings when a ball is coming, helping each other, when the pins jam, covering for each other when someone needs a break. The pay is not great, but it is steady, and for young men with limited options, it is a way to earn money, to contribute to their families, to save for the future. And there is a certain pride in doing hard work, in being tough enough to handle it, in knowing that without them the bowling alley could not function. But technology is advancing. By the late 1950s, automatic pin setters are being developed, machines that can reset pins faster, more accurately, and without risk of injury. Bowling alleys begin installing them, and one by one, the pin setters are let go, their jobs replaced by machines that never tire, never complain, never need to be paid. The work disappears, and the young men who did it move on to other jobs, other industries, carrying with them the memory of a time when even leisure required hard, physical, human labour. Your wristwatch has stopped ticking, so you take it to the watch. Repairman, whose shop is so small you can barely turn around inside it, every surface covered with tiny gears, springs, screws, and tools so delicate they look like they belong in a dollhouse. He takes your watch, examines it through a jeweller's loop, and begins disassembling it with movements so precise they seem almost surgical. He works in silence, occasionally muttering to himself, and when he hands the watch back to you, it is ticking again, restored to life by someone who understands the language of small, intricate things. The shop is dim, lit by a single lamp that casts a focused pool of light onto his workbench, and the air smells faintly of oil and metal and old wood. The walls are lined with shelves holding watch cases, parts, tools, and completed repairs waiting to be picked up, each one tagged with a name and a date. The space is cluttered but organised, everything within reach, arranged in a way that makes sense only to him. He sits on a tall stool hunched over his work, and when you enter he glances up briefly, nods a greeting and gestures for you to place your watch on the counter. He picks it up gently as though it were fragile, which it is, and holds it to his ear, listening, then shakes his head. "Dead," he says, not unkindly, and you nod, knowing that you have come to the right place. He opens the back of the watch with a tiny screwdriver, revealing the movement inside, a world of gears and springs and jewels, all working together in perfect harmony when everything is right, all frozen when something goes wrong. He peers at it through his loupe, a magnifying glass that fits over one eye, and begins his diagnosis, checking the mainspring, examining the escapement, looking for bent teeth, broken pivots, dried oil. The repair itself is painstaking. He uses tweezers to remove tiny screws, lifts gears out with practiced care, cleans each part with a brush and solvent, inspects them for wear, replaces anything that is damaged. His hands are steady, his focus absolute, and he works with the patience of someone who knows that rushing will only cause mistakes, that this kind of work cannot be hurried. When he reassembles the watch, he oils the movement with a needle-thin applicator, Just a drop here, a drop there, enough to lubricate but not so much that it gums up the works. He winds the watch, sets it, and listens, holding it to his ear, and when he hears the steady tick, 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 he smiles, a small, satisfied smile, and hands it back to you. The cost is modest, a few dollars, and you pay him gladly, grateful that something you thought was lost has been saved. He wraps the watch in tissue paper, places it in a small envelope, and wishes you well, already turning back to his workbench, to the next repair, the next challenge, the next opportunity to bring something broken back to life. But watches are changing. By the 1960s, cheaper, mass-produced watches are flooding the market, watches that cost less to replace than to repair. Electronic watches are coming, with no gears, no springs, nothing that can be fixed by hand. The watch repairman's skills, honed over decades, become less valuable, less necessary, and one by one, the small shops close, and the men who worked in them retire, taking with them a kind of knowledge that will not be passed on, that the world no longer needs. High above the street, the telephone lineman works on the pole, his tool belt heavy with pliers, cutters, and spools of wire, his movements confident despite the height. He climbs with the ease of someone who has spent half his life up here, connecting homes, fixing broken lines, keeping the neighbourhood's conversations flowing. It is dangerous work, but he does it without complaint because someone has to keep the wires humming, and he's become very good at it. He wears thick rubber gloves, a safety belt that wraps around the pole, and steel-toed boots with climbing spikes that dig into the wood with each step. The climb is slow, deliberate, each movement calculated, and when he reaches the top, he hooks his belt around the pole and leans back, trusting the equipment, trusting his training, trusting that the pole will hold. From up here, the view is expansive, rooftops stretching in every direction, streets laid out in neat grids, the world reduced to a map. But he is not here for the view. He is here to work, to splice wires, to trace a deadline, to connect a new customer, to keep the telephone system running. The telephone lines are a tangled web, dozens of wires running from pole to pole, some active, some dead, some carrying voices, some carrying nothing at all. He knows how to tell them apart, how to test them with a small handset he carries on his belt, how to splice them together with twist-on connectors, how to wrap them with electrical tape to protect them from the weather. The work requires strength, balance, and focus. A gust of wind can make the pole sway, a sudden movement can throw off his balance, and a mistake with a wrong wire can result in a shock, a burn, or worse. But he is careful, methodical, and experienced, and he works with the confidence of someone who has done this 1,000 times and knows exactly what to do. Below, people go about their lives, unaware of the man above them, the man who makes their phone calls possible, who fixes the lines when storms knock them down, who installs new connections when families move in. He is invisible most of the time, noticed only when something goes wrong, and even then people do not think about the climb, the risk, the skill required to do what he does. When he finishes, he tests the line one more time, listens for the dial tone, nods with satisfaction, and begins his descent. His spikes biting into the wood, his movements slow and controlled. He reaches the ground, coils his safety belt, checks his tools, and moves on to the next job, the next pole, the next problem to solve. But the telephone system is evolving. Underground cables are being installed, eliminating the need for overhead wires, and the poles that once lined every street are slowly being removed. The lineman's work continues, but it changes, becomes less visible, less dramatic, and eventually the men who climbed poles become a memory, a piece of history, a reminder of a time when communication depended on wires strung through the air and men brave enough to climb up and fix them. Late at night, after the store is closed, the window dresser works behind the glass, arranging mannequins, draping fabric, positioning lights, creating scenes that will stop passers-by in their tracks. She works alone or with a small team, her creativity given full rein in the display window, and when morning comes, people gather on the sidewalk to admire her work, to see what story she has told this time. Her job is invisible until it is not, and then it is everywhere. The display window is her canvas, a large rectangular space framed by the storefront, and she treats it with the seriousness of an artist preparing for an exhibition. She begins by clearing out the old display, carefully removing mannequins, dismantling props, rolling up backdrops, creating a blank space that she will fill with something new, something eye-catching, something that will make people want to come inside. She works from sketches she has drawn earlier, rough plans that show where each element will go, what the colour scheme will be, what mood she is trying to create. But she also improvises, adjusting as she works, moving a mannequin a few inches to the left, tilting a lamp to change the shadows, draping fabric in a way that was not in the original plan but looks perfect. The mannequins are heavy, awkward, and she handles them with care, dressing them in the store's latest fashions, adjusting their poses, making sure their hands are positioned naturally, their heads tilted at flattering angles. She styles their wigs, applies makeup to their faces, adds accessories, jewellery, scarves, hats, until they look almost alive, almost real, frozen in a moment of elegance. The backdrop is important, setting the scene, providing context. Sometimes it is simple, a painted canvas suggesting a park or a beach or a city street. Sometimes it is elaborate, a constructed set with furniture, plants, lighting effects, a miniature world contained within the window. She arranges everything with an eye for composition, for balance, for the way light and shadow will play across the scene when the sun rises. Lighting is her secret weapon, the thing that can make a good display great. She positions spotlights to highlight the mannequins, uses coloured gels to create mood, hides lights behind props to create depth and drama. She steps outside periodically to see how it looks from the street, adjusting, tweaking, perfecting, until she's satisfied. When she finishes, usually in the early morning hours, she locks the display, pulls down the shade or curtain that hides it from view, and goes home to sleep for a few hours. When the store opens, the shade is raised and the display is revealed, and people stop and point and talk about it, and some of them come inside, drawn by the scene she has created, by the story she has told. Her work is ephemeral, lasting only a few weeks before it is replaced by something new. But while it is up, it is powerful, a piece of art that exists in the public space, that invites people to dream, to imagine, to want. But as shopping malls and big box stores become more common, as retail becomes more about efficiency and less about experience, the elaborate window display fades, replaced by simple signage, by posters, by nothing at all, and the window dresser, the artist behind the glass, becomes another casualty of a world that values speed over beauty. In the nightclub, the cigarette girl moves through the dim, smoky room, her tray hung from a strap around her neck, her uniform, designed to look both professional and glamorous. She offers cigarettes, cigars, matches, her voice polite but practiced, and patrons wave her over, hand her money, make small talk that she handles with the skill of someone who has learned to be friendly without being too friendly. Her job is small but visible, a part of the nightlife landscape, and she knows how to navigate it. Her uniform is eye-catching, usually a short jacket with military-style braiding, a pillbox hat, fishnet stockings, heels, an outfit designed to attract attention without crossing the line into impropriety. The tray hangs at chest level, divided into compartments holding different brands of cigarettes, cigars in cellophane wrappers, matchbooks with the nightclub's logo, and sometimes small novelties, mints, chewing gum, trinkets. She walks the room slowly, methodically, making eye contact, offering a smile, saying, "Cigarettes. Cigars?" in a voice that carries just enough to be heard over the music, when someone signals her she approaches, presents the tray, waits while they make their selection, makes change from a small pouch at her waist. She's quick, efficient, keeping the transaction brief, keeping the flow of customers moving. The job requires a certain kind of toughness, a thick skin. Men flirt, sometimes too aggressively, and she's learned to deflect with humour, with a polite but firm boundary, with the knowledge that the management will back her up if someone crosses the line. She is friendly, charming even, but she is working, and she never forgets that, never lets the facade slip into something more personal. She also serves as a kind of social lubricant, a neutral presence that patrons can engage with, that provides an excuse to pause, to light a cigarette, to take a breath in the middle of an intense conversation or a long night of drinking. She overhears secrets, arguments, proposals, breakups, and she learns to forget them, to let the words wash over her without sinking in. The tips are good, especially late in the evening when patrons are generous or drunk or both, and she pockets the money carefully, counting it later in the staff room, adding it up, calculating how much she made, how much closer she is to whatever goal she is saving for. For some cigarette girls, this job is temporary, a way to earn money while pursuing something else. For others, it is more permanent, a steady income in a world where steady incomes are hard to find. But the cigarette girl's days are numbered. By the 1960s, smoking is beginning its long, slow decline, and nightclubs start phasing out cigarette service, finding it easier to install vending machines in the lobby. The job disappears quietly, and the cigarette girl, once a fixture of nightlife, becomes a nostalgic image, a character in old movies, a reminder of a time when smoking was glamorous and the nightclub was a world unto itself. At the theatre, the restaurant, the upscale event, the hat-check girl stands behind a small counter taking coats and hats, handing out numbered tickets, and remembering who wore what even without looking at the tag. She works quickly, efficiently, her smile warm but professional, and when you return to collect your coat at the end of the evening, she retrieves it without hesitation, as though she's been holding it in trust all night. Her station is usually tucked into a corner of the lobby, a small coat room lined with hooks and hangers, a wooden counter separating her from the patrons. She wears a uniform, often a simple dress or blouse, her appearance neat and appropriate for the venue, and she greets each arrival with the same courtesy, the same practiced efficiency. You hand her your coat and hat, and she accepts them with both hands, checking them quickly for any damage, any valuables left in the pockets, then hangs them carefully, making sure they will not wrinkle or fall. She tears a numbered ticket from a roll, gives one half to you, pins the other half to your coat, and the transaction is complete. It takes seconds, but it is done with care, with attention to detail, because she knows that people value their belongings, that a good coat is expensive, that losing someone's hat would be a disaster. During the event, she stays at her post, ready for latecomers, for people who decide the room is too warm and want to check a jacket midway through, for anyone who needs assistance. The coat room is quiet, separated from the noise of the party or the performance, and she uses the time to organise, to make sure everything is in order, to prepare for the rush that will come when the event ends. And that rush is intense. Suddenly everyone wants their coat at once, and she moves quickly, reading ticket numbers, pulling coats, handing them over, accepting tips with a gracious nod. She has developed a system, a way of remembering where things are, and she rarely has to search, rarely keeps anyone waiting. Her efficiency is part of the job, part of what makes her good at it. The tips are her real income. The base wage is low, but the tips, especially at upscale venues, can be generous, and she has learned to be polite, to make eye contact, to say thank you, and have a good evening in a way that invites generosity without demanding it. By the end of the night, her pocket is heavy with coins and bills, and she counts it carefully, feeling the satisfaction of a job well done. But fashion is changing, and so is culture. By the 1960s, hats are becoming less common, coats are more casual, and people are less willing to check their belongings, preferring to keep them close, to hang them on the back of their chairs. The hat check girl's job begins to disappear, and the coat rooms are closed, repurposed, turned into storage or office space, and another small job, another human interaction, fades from daily life. On the corner downtown, the shoeshine man sets up his stand, his wooden box worn smooth from years of use, his brushes and tins of polish arranged neatly within reach. You step up onto the stand, and he works with quick rhythmic strokes, brushing, polishing, buffing, transforming scuffed leather into something that gleams. He talks as he works, about the weather, about the neighbourhood, about nothing and everything, and when he finishes, your shoes look brand new, and you tip him well because the work he does matters. His stand is simple, portable, just a wooden box with a platform for your foot, and a seat for him to sit on while he works. Inside the box are his tools, horsehair brushes, daubers for applying polish, buffing cloths, tins of polish in various shades of brown and black, a small bottle of water for dampening the brushes. Everything is organised, worn but well maintained, because his tools are his livelihood, and he takes care of them. You approach, and he gestures to the stand, and you step up, placing one foot on the platform. He examines your shoes with a professional eye, noting the scuffs, the dusty leather, the worn spots that need attention. He selects a polish that matches the colour, opens the tin, and begins applying it with a dauber, working it into the leather with small circular motions, covering the scuffs, restoring the colour. Then he takes his brush, a stiff horsehair brush, and begins to work the polish in, his strokes fast and rhythmic, a steady back and forth motion that creates heat, that works the polish deep into the leather. The sound is distinctive, a brisk shh that carries down the street, and people recognise it, know what it means, know that the shoeshine man is at work. He talks while he works, not constantly, but enough to make the experience pleasant, to fill the time. He asks where you're headed, comments on the weather, mentions something happening in the neighbourhood, and you respond, enjoying the casual conversation, the human connection that comes with this small transaction. He is friendly, personable, but not intrusive, understanding the line between conversation and privacy. When the polish is worked in, he switches to a softer cloth, a buffing cloth, and his strokes become faster, more vigorous, and the leather begins to shine, catching the light, gleaming with a deep, rich lustre. He steps back, examines his work, nods with satisfaction, and gestures for you to switch feet, and the process begins again. When both shoes are finished, you step down, look at your shoes, see yourself reflected in the polished leather, and you feel a small surge of pride, a sense that you are put together, presentable, ready to face the day. You pay him, usually adding a tip, and he accepts it with a nod of thanks, already turning to the next customer, to the next pair of shoes, to the next opportunity to practice his craft. But the world is changing. Casual dress is becoming more common, sneakers are replacing leather shoes, and the idea of stopping to have your shoe shined feels old-fashioned, unnecessary. The shoeshine stands disappear from street corners, from train stations, from airports, and the men who work them retire or find other work, and the simple ritual of having your shoes shined by someone who takes pride in the work becomes a rarity, a luxury, a memory of a time when even small things were done well. The knife sharpener walks through the neighbourhood pushing a small cart, calling out his services in a voice that carries down the block. Your mother hears him and gathers up the dull kitchen knives, the scissors, the garden shears, and brings them outside. He sets up his grinding wheel, pedals it with his foot, and holds each blade to the spinning stone, sending up a shower of sparks and a high, singing whine. When he finishes, the knives are sharp enough to slice through a tomato like butter, and your mother pays him from the household money, grateful for the skill he brings to her doorstep. He is an itinerant tradesman, a man who makes his living by travelling from neighbourhood to neighbourhood, offering a service that people need but cannot easily do themselves. His cart is simple, a wooden frame mounted on two wheels, with a grinding wheel mounted horizontally, connected to a pedal mechanism that he operates with his foot. The grinding wheel is stone, coarse and heavy, and when it spins it creates friction, heat, and a distinctive sound that announces his presence as surely as his call. Knives, scissors, shears, he calls, his voice rising and falling in a rhythmic chant that carries down the street, and people hear him and come out of their houses carrying whatever needs sharpening. He greets each customer by name if he knows them, and he usually does, because he follows the same route week after week, month after month, becoming a familiar figure, a reliable presence. Your mother hands him the knives, and he examines each one, testing the edge with his thumb, feeling for nicks, checking the blade for damage. He nods, sets them aside, and begins his work. He positions the cart so the grinding wheel is stable, sits on a small stool attached to the cart and begins pedalling, his foot moving in steady circles, building momentum, getting the wheel spinning fast. He holds the first knife at a precise angle, touching the blade to the stone, and sparks fly, bright orange sparks that shower down onto the pavement, and the air fills with a smell of hot metal and stone dust. The whine of the blade against the stone is high-pitched, almost musical, and he works with practiced movements, keeping the angle consistent, running the entire length of the blade across the stone, reshaping the edge, removing the dull metal, revealing the sharp steel beneath. He works quickly but carefully, his hands steady, his eyes focused, and when he finishes one side, he flips the knife and does the other, making sure the edge is even, balanced, sharp from tip to heel. He tests it again with his thumb, nods with satisfaction and sets it aside, moving on to the next knife, the next pair of scissors, the next garden shears. When he finishes, he wipes each blade clean with a rag, handing them back to your mother one by one, and she tests them herself, slicing through a piece of paper, watching it split cleanly, effortlessly. She smiles, pays him a few coins, and he thanks her, packs up his cart and moves on, his call already rising again as he heads toward the next street, the next customer, the next set of blades waiting to be sharpened. But convenience is changing everything. By the 1960s, disposable razors are becoming common, cheap knives are easier to replace than sharpen, and people are less willing to wait, less willing to maintain. The knife sharpener's route becomes less profitable, his customers fewer, and eventually he stops coming, and the distinctive sound of blade against stone, the shower of sparks, the singing whine, all of it fades from the neighbourhood, and people learn to do without, or to buy new, or to make do with dull blades that tear rather than cut. The wedding band was simpler than the engagement ring, but no less important. It was a plain circle of gold or silver, unadorned and timeless, a symbol of continuity and commitment. Some men chose matching bands so that both husband and wife wore identical rings, a visual reminder that they were now partners, equals in the marriage. The band was presented during the ceremony, slipped onto her finger with words spoken before God, family and community. You purchased the wedding band weeks before the ceremony, visiting the same jeweler who had sold you the engagement ring. He recognized you immediately, smiled, asked how the engagement was going, congratulated you on the upcoming wedding. He brought out a tray of wedding bands, plain circles in varying widths and metals, each one gleaming softly under the shop lights. You examined them carefully, lifting each one, feeling its weight, imagining it on her finger. Some were yellow gold, warm and traditional. Others were white gold or platinum, cooler in tone, more modern. The jeweler explained the differences, the durability of each metal, the way they would wear over time, how they would need to be cared for. You listened, asked questions, made your decision based on what felt right, what seemed like something she could wear every day for the rest of her life without tiring of it. You also chose your own band, often matching hers, a symbol of equality and partnership. The idea that both spouses wore wedding rings was relatively new in the 1950s, gaining popularity after World War II, when soldiers wore rings as reminders of home, of the women waiting for them. You liked the symmetry of it, the idea that both of you would carry this visible mark of your marriage, that anyone who looked at your hands would know you were committed, claimed, no longer available. The bands were sized carefully, measured to fit perfectly, neither too tight nor too loose. The jeweler used a ring sizer, sliding different sizes onto your fingers until he found the right one, then did the same for her when she accompanied you on a return visit. Some couples had their bands engraved, initials and dates etched on the inside, hidden messages that only the two of you would ever see. You considered it, discussed it, decided whether you wanted that extra layer of personalization or preferred the simplicity of an unmarked band. You paid for the bands, watching as the jeweler wrapped them carefully, placing each in its own small box. He handed them to you with a smile, wished you luck, told you to come back if you ever needed them cleaned or resized. You left the shop with the boxes in your pocket, feeling their weight, knowing that in a few weeks you would slip one of these rings onto her finger and speak the words that would bind you together for life. The bands were kept safe until the wedding day, often entrusted to the best man who carried them, in his pocket during the ceremony, ready to hand them over at the appropriate moment. You checked multiple times to make sure he had them, worried irrationally that they might be lost or forgotten, that the ceremony would reach that critical moment and the rings would not be there. During the ceremony, when the officiant asked for the rings, your best man stepped forward, placed them in the officiant's hand or on a small pillow if the ceremony was formal. The officiant blessed them, spoke words about their symbolism, about the unbroken circle representing eternal love, about the precious metal representing the value of the commitment being made. Then came the moment. You took her ring, held it gently, and slipped it onto her finger, sliding it over her knuckle until it rested beside the engagement ring. You spoke the words, your voice steady despite the emotion swelling in your chest. With this ring, I thee wed. Simple words, ancient words, words that carried the weight of history and tradition and personal commitment all at once. She did the same for you, taking your ring, her hands trembling slightly, slipping it onto your finger. You felt the metal settle into place, cool at first, then warming against your skin. You looked down at it, this plain circle of gold, and felt something shift inside you. You were married now. This ring was proof, a symbol you would wear every day, a reminder of the promises you had just made. The ring stayed on your fingers from that moment forward, rarely removed, becoming part of you. You felt naked without yours, on the rare occasions when you took it off to do heavy work or repairs. You twisted it absently when you were nervous or thinking, feeling its smooth surface, drawing comfort from its presence. It was a talisman, a touchstone, a physical manifestation of the invisible bond you shared. Years later, the ring would show signs of wear, scratches and dings accumulated over decades of life lived together, But those imperfections only made it more valuable, more meaningful, a record of your marriage written in gold, a testament to the commitment you made on that day when you first slipped it on and promised to love her forever. The vows were not casual promises. They were sacred commitments, spoken aloud in front of everyone who mattered, binding you to this woman for the rest of your life. You stood at the altar, your voice steady despite your nerves, and repeated the words the minister spoke. To have and to hold from this day forward, for better or for worse, for richer or for poorer, in sickness and in health, until death do us part. These were not empty phrases. They were the foundation of everything that came next. You had heard these vows before, at other weddings, at your friends' ceremonies, at family members' marriages. You had listened as other men spoke them, their voices confident or trembling, their faces serious or smiling. You had witnessed the moment when words became bonds, when promises spoken aloud transformed two individuals into a married couple. But hearing them was different from speaking them. Standing at the altar, facing the woman you loved, preparing to make these promises yourself, the weight of the words became real in a way you had not fully anticipated. The minister spoke first, his voice carrying through the church, reaching every person gathered in the pews. He explained the significance of the vows, reminded everyone present that marriage was not to be entered into lightly, that the promises being made were sacred and binding. He looked at you, met your eyes, and you nodded, understanding, ready. Then he began the vows, speaking each line slowly, clearly, pausing after each phrase so you could repeat it. You focused on the words, on their meaning, refusing to simply recite them by rote, to have and to hold. You thought about what that meant, about holding her when she cried, about having her beside you through all the years ahead. From this day forward. Not just today, not just when things were easy, but from this moment until the end of your life. Your voice was steady as you repeated each line, loud enough for everyone to hear, clear enough that there could be no doubt about your commitment, for better or for worse. You knew there would be worse, that life would bring challenges, hardships, losses. You were promising to stay through all of it, to not abandon her when things got difficult, to honour your commitment even when it would be easier to walk away, for richer or for poorer. You thought about the modest savings you had, the apartment you would live in, the uncertain future of your finances. You were promising that money would not determine your love, that you would stay with her whether you prospered or struggled, whether you achieved wealth or lived paycheck to paycheck, in sickness and in health. This was perhaps the most sobering part of the vows, the acknowledgement that bodies failed, that illness came, that there would be times when one of you needed care, needed patience, needed the other to be strong when strength felt impossible. You were promising to be there, to nurse her through sickness, to support her through weakness, to love her even when her body betrayed her. Until death do us part. The finality of these words settled over you like a cloak. This was not a temporary arrangement. This was not something you could walk away from when it stopped being fun or easy. This was forever, or as close to forever as human life allowed. You were binding yourself to her for the rest of your days, and that binding was both terrifying and beautiful. She spoke her vows next, repeating the same words, making the same promises. You watched her face as she spoke, saw the emotion in her eyes, the slight trembling of her lips, the way she had to pause to steady her voice. She meant every word, just as you did, and knowing that, hearing her commitment spoken aloud made your own promises feel even more significant. When the vows were finished, when both of you had spoken, the minister pronounced you husband and wife. The words hung in the air for a moment, transforming everything. You were no longer engaged. You were no longer courting. You were married, bound together by the promises you had just made, by the vows you had spoken in front of God and family and community. You would remember those vows for the rest of your life, return to them in difficult moments, remind yourself of what you had promised. They were not just words spoken on a single day. They were the framework of your marriage, the principles that would guide you through decades of life together, the foundation on which everything else would be built. The bread delivery man arrives at your door before breakfast, his truck loaded with fresh loaves, rolls and pastries, still warm from the bakery. He carries a basket to your porch, exchanges it for yesterday's empty one, and moves on to the next house, his route, memorized, his schedule tight. The smell of fresh bread lingers after he leaves, and when you bring the basket inside, the loaves are soft and warm, and breakfast feels like a small celebration. He starts his day in the dark, arriving at the bakery at 4 a.m, when the bakers are pulling the first loaves from the ovens, the air thick with yeast and heat, and the smell that makes your mouth water even before you are fully awake. He loads his truck quickly, efficiently, stacking baskets filled with bread, arranging them by route, by customer, by type, making sure everything is accounted for, that nothing is forgotten. His truck is a panel van, painted with the bakery's name and logo, and inside it smells like heaven. Like warm dough and butter and cinnamon. A smell so powerful it makes people stop on the sidewalk when he drives past. The baskets are woven wicker, sturdy and well used, each one holding several loaves, and he handles them with care, knowing that bread is fragile, that a dropped basket means crushed loaves and unhappy customers. He knows his route by heart, every house, every doorstep, every customer's preference. Mrs. Henderson takes 2 loaves of white and a dozen rolls on Tuesdays. The Johnsons want rye on Thursdays. The Martins always order an extra loaf when family is visiting, and he knows to check with them, to make sure they have what they need. He is not just delivering bread, he is part of the rhythm of the neighbourhood, a reliable presence that people count on. He parks at the curb, steps out with a basket and walks quickly to the porch, his movements practiced, efficient. He sets down the fresh basket, picks up the empty one from yesterday, checks to make sure there is no note, no special request tucked inside, and if there is, he makes a note on his clipboard, adjusting tomorrow's delivery accordingly. The bread itself is perfect, golden crusts that crackle when you press them, soft interiors that tear into fluffy pieces, the kind of bread that makes even plain butter taste like a luxury. It is still warm when it arrives, and your mother slices it immediately, the knife gliding through easily, and the smell fills the kitchen, and breakfast becomes something special, something worth waking up for. He works quickly because his route is long, because the bread needs to be delivered while it is still fresh, and because he has other responsibilities waiting for him back at the bakery. But he's never rushed, never careless, and he greets the occasional early riser with a smile, a wave, a friendly word before moving on. There is something deeply satisfying about this work, about bringing something essential, something nourishing, something warm and fresh to people's homes. He takes pride in it, in the reliability, in the quality, in the small role he plays in making people's mornings better. But supermarkets are expanding, and they have bakery sections now, places where people can buy bread at their convenience, where it sits on shelves in plastic bags, where it lasts for days instead of hours. The bread delivery man's route grows shorter, his customer base shrinks, and eventually the bakery discontinues home delivery, and the truck stops coming, and the smell of fresh bread no longer greets you on your porch, and breakfast becomes a little less special, a little less warm, a little less connected to the community that once surrounded you. Though gas lights are fading by the 1950s, in some older neighbourhoods, the lamplighter still makes his rounds at dusk carrying his long pole, lighting each street lamp one by one as the sky deepens from blue to purple to black. It is a job from another era, a holdover from a time when light was something you had to tend, and he does it with the quiet ritual of someone who knows he's among the last. That soon this work will be gone, replaced by electric lights that flicker on automatically without a human hand. He walks slowly through the neighbourhood, his pole resting on his shoulder, his steps measured, deliberate. The pole is long, perhaps 12 feet, with a hook at the end and a small flame that burns steadily, fueled by a wick soaked in oil. He moves from lamp to lamp, stopping at each one, reaching up with the pole, opening the glass door of the lamp, touching the flame to the gas jet inside. There is a soft whoosh as the gas ignites, and the lamp glows to life, casting a warm, flickering circle of light onto the street below. The lamplighter is old, his face weathered, his hands steady despite his age. He has been doing this for decades, since he was a young man, and he knows every lamp on his route, knows which ones are temperamental, which ones need extra attention, which ones are due for maintenance. He works alone, in silence, his presence almost ghostly, a figure from the past moving through the present. Children sometimes follow him, keeping their distance, watching with fascination as he lights each lamp. There is something magical about it, the way the street transforms, the way darkness retreats, the way the neighbourhood comes to life under the glow of the gaslights. He acknowledges them with a nod, a small smile, but he does not stop, does not break his rhythm, because the work must be done before full darkness, before people need the light. The gaslights themselves are beautiful, ornate iron posts topped with glass lanterns, relics of the 19th century that have somehow survived into the modern era. They cast a softer, warmer light than electric bulbs, a light that flickers slightly, that feels alive, that reminds people of a slower, gentler time. But they are expensive to maintain, inefficient compared to electricity, and one by one neighbourhoods are converting, replacing the gaslights with electric streetlights that turn on with the flip of a switch. The lamplighter knows his job is ending. He has watched the electric light spread, has seen his route grow, shorter year by year, lamp by lamp. He does not complain, does not rail against progress, but there is a sadness in his eyes, a quiet grief for the loss of something beautiful, something human, something that required care and attention and ritual. When he finishes his route, the neighbourhood is bathed in the warm glow of gaslight, and he walks home slowly, his pole on his shoulder, his work done for another night. In the morning he will return, extinguishing each lamp one by one, and the cycle will begin again, as it has for decades, as it will for only a little while longer. By the early 1960s the last gaslights are converted, and the lamplighter's job disappears entirely. The pole is put away, the flame extinguished for the last time, and the streets light themselves now, automatically, efficiently, without ceremony. The lamplighter retires, and the neighbourhood loses something it did not fully appreciate until it was gone, a small human ritual, a connection to the past, a reminder that light, like so many things, was once tended by hand, by someone who cared, by someone who showed up every evening as the sky darkened, making sure the night was a little less dark, a little less lonely, a little more filled with light. The soda fountain waitress stands behind the counter in her crisp uniform, white apron tied neatly at her waist, a small pad and pencil always within reach. She knows the menu by heart, knows which customers want extra whipped cream, who takes their coffee black, who orders the same thing every Saturday afternoon. She moves with practiced efficiency, balancing plates on her arms, refilling drinks without being asked, chatting with regulars while keeping an eye on new customers who might need help deciding between a chocolate malt and a vanilla phosphate. Her uniform is always clean, pressed each morning before her shift, her hair pinned back in a neat style that stays in place no matter how busy the lunch rush gets. She wears comfortable shoes, white leather Oxfords with thick rubber soles because she will be on her feet for hours, walking back and forth along the counter, carrying trays, clearing dishes, wiping down surfaces between customers. The counter itself is long, lined with red vinyl stools that spin, and behind it stretches her workspace, the soda fountain with its gleaming chrome fixtures, the ice cream freezer with its metal tubs, the griddle where the cook makes sandwiches and burgers, the coffee urns that stay hot all day. She navigates this space with the ease of someone who knows it intimately, who can reach for a glass without looking, who can judge by sound when the coffee needs refilling. She greets customers as they sit down, sometimes by name, sometimes with a smile and a menu, and she takes their orders with quick, neat handwriting, her pencil moving across the pad in practice strokes. She calls out orders to the cook using the shorthand language of diners and soda fountains, language that sounds like code but makes perfect sense to anyone who works here. A chocolate malt becomes a black cow, a cheese sandwich becomes a grilled on white, and the cook acknowledges each order with a grunt or a nod, already reaching for ingredients. She knows how to make people feel welcome, how to chat without being intrusive, how to read a customer's mood and adjust accordingly. Some people want conversation, want to tell her about their day, their troubles, their small victories, and she listens, offers sympathy or congratulations, remembers details for next time. Others want to be left alone, want to eat in peace, and she respects that, checking in only when necessary, refilling their coffee without interrupting their thoughts. The lunch rush is intense, every stool filled, people waiting by the door, and she moves faster, her movements becoming almost automatic, taking orders, delivering food, clearing plates, making change, all of it flowing together in a choreography of efficiency. She never seems flustered, never loses track of who ordered what, and she handles difficult customers with grace, deflecting rudeness with politeness, solving problems before they escalate. Her tips are modest but steady, quarters and dimes left on the counter, tucked under empty plates, handed to her directly with a thank you. She collects them throughout her shift, deposits them in her apron pocket, and counts them at the end of the day, calculating her earnings, feeling the satisfaction of work done well. But the soda fountain is fading. Fast food restaurants are opening, offering cheaper food, faster service, and people start choosing convenience over the personal touch. The waitress watches her tips decline, her shifts get shorter, and eventually the soda fountain closes, replaced by a chain drugstore that sells medicine and cosmetics, but serves nothing from a counter, and she finds other work, but she never forgets the rhythm of those busy days, the regulars who knew her name, the satisfaction of serving people in a place where everyone for a little while felt at home. High above the audience, hidden in a small booth at the back of the theatre, the projectionist threads film through the projector with the precision of someone who has done this 1,000 times. He monitors the reels as they spin, watching for breaks, for scratches, for any sign that something might go wrong. The beam of light cuts through the darkness below, carrying images and stories to the screen, and he is the unseen guardian of that magic, the person who makes sure the show goes on, frame by frame, reel by reel, night after night. His booth is small, cramped, hot from the heat of the projector lamps, and it smells like ozone and film stock and machine oil. The walls are lined with shelves holding film cans, reels wrapped in metal containers labelled with the names of movies, and he knows each one, knows which prints are pristine and which ones are worn, which reels have splices that need watching, which films are prone to breaking. The projector itself is a massive machine, mechanical and beautiful, with spinning reels and intricate gears and a lamp so bright it could burn your hand if you touched the housing. He loads the film carefully, threading it through the gate, past the sound head, onto the take-up reel, making sure the tension is right, that the loops are formed correctly, that everything is aligned. A mistake here means a break during the show, means stopping, rethreading, disappointing an audience, and he takes pride in never making mistakes. He starts the show at the precise moment, flipping switches, opening the dowser that covers the lamp, and the light bursts forth, projecting the studio logo onto the screen, and the audience below settles into their seats, and the movie begins. He watches through a small window in the booth, not the screen but the film itself, the way it moves through the projector, listening to the steady clicking of the mechanism, alert for any change in sound that might indicate a problem. Features in the 1950s often come on multiple reels, each one lasting about 20 minutes, and he has to change reels seamlessly, using 2 projectors, starting the second one at exactly the right moment, switching from one to the other so smoothly that the audience never notices the transition. It requires timing, coordination, a kind of performance that no one sees but everyone depends on. He also splices broken film, a delicate operation that involves cutting out the damaged frames, overlapping the ends, applying film cement, waiting for it to dry, checking the splice to make sure it is strong enough to withstand the tension of the projector. He works quickly, efficiently, knowing that every minute the film is stopped is a minute the audience is waiting, growing restless, and he takes pride in minimizing those moments, in keeping the show running smoothly. Between shows he rewinds the film, inspects it for damage, cleans the projector, makes notes about any issues, prepares for the next screening. His work is solitary, isolated from the audience, from the rest of the theatre staff, but he does not mind. He likes the quiet, the focus, the satisfaction of doing technical work well. But technology is changing. By the 1960s and 70s, film stock is improving, reels are getting longer, and eventually automation arrives, systems that can run entire movies without human intervention. The projectionist skill becomes less necessary, less valued, and the job begins to disappear, replaced by machines that can do the work without breaks, without salary, without the human touch that once ensured every show was perfect. When urgent news cannot wait until morning, when someone needs to reach across the distance in the middle of the night, the telegram messenger boy is called. He arrives on his bicycle, breathless from pedalling fast through dark streets, and hands over the yellow envelope with the solemnity of someone who knows that midnight telegrams rarely carry good news. He waits on the porch, his bicycle leaning against the railing, just in case there is a reply, just in case the news requires an immediate response, and he watches as the recipient reads, their face changing in the porch light, and he feels the weight of being the bearer of messages that change lives. The call comes through to the telegraph office just before midnight, and the night clerk, one of only 2 people working at this hour, takes down the message and marks it urgent, which means it must be delivered immediately, regardless of the time. The messenger boy, asleep in a small room behind the office, is roused, handed the telegram, given the address, and sent out into the night. He dresses quickly, pulling on his uniform jacket over his shirt, grabbing his cap, checking that his bicycle lamp has oil and that the flame is lit. The streets are dark, empty, lit only by occasional street lamps and the dim glow from windows where people are still awake. He pedals hard, his breath visible in the cool night air, his lamp casting a small circle of light ahead of him. He knows these streets, has delivered telegrams in daylight many times, but at night everything feels different, unfamiliar, slightly menacing. He navigates by memory and by the street signs that appear briefly in his lamplight, counting blocks, watching for landmarks, trying not to think about what news he is carrying, trying not to imagine the scene that will unfold when he knocks on the door. The house is dark when he arrives, everyone inside asleep, and he hesitates for a moment before climbing the front steps and knocking, quietly at first, then louder when no one responds. A light comes on upstairs, then another downstairs, and finally the door opens, and a man stands there, dishevelled, worried, knowing that a telegram at this hour means something is wrong. The messenger boy hands over the envelope, his voice formal, his words the same ones he's been trained to say. "Telegram, sir." The man takes it, tears it open, reads it in the porch light, and his face changes, crumples, and the messenger boy looks away, giving him privacy, giving him space to absorb whatever news has arrived. Sometimes there is a reply, a message to be sent back immediately, and the messenger boy waits, his pencil ready, writing down the words as they are dictated, his hand steady despite the emotion around him. Sometimes there is no reply, just a nod of thanks, sometimes a tip pressed into his hand, sometimes nothing at all, just the door closing, and he remounts his bicycle and rides back through the dark streets to the telegraph office. He does not sleep well after these deliveries, the images staying with him, the faces of people receiving bad news, the weight of being the one who brought it. But he returns to work the next day, and the next, because the job is necessary, because someone has to deliver the messages that cannot wait, and he has learned to carry that responsibility, to do his work with dignity and compassion, even when the work is hard. But the midnight telegram is becoming rarer. Long-distance calling is improving, becoming more affordable, and people choose to call instead, to hear the voice of the person delivering the news, to ask questions, to respond immediately. The messenger boy's night calls become less frequent, and eventually they stop altogether, and he is grateful in a way to be free of that burden, but also aware that something important has been lost, a ritual of urgency and formality that marked the most important moments in people's lives. At the bowling alley, the shoe rental clerk stands behind a long counter, lined with shelves of worn leather bowling shoes, sorted by size, their soles smooth from thousands of approaches down polished lanes. He takes your street shoes, hands you a pair of rentals that smell faintly of disinfectant and old leather, and marks your size on a ticket that you will return when the night is over. He works quickly during busy hours, exchanging shoes, making change, spraying disinfectant into returned pairs, his hands moving in a rhythm that never stops, and he knows every regular, remembers their size without asking, greets them with familiarity that makes the bowling alley feel less like a business and more like a gathering place. The counter is worn smooth from years of use, the wood surface polished by countless hands, countless shoes placed upon it, countless transactions completed. Behind him, the shelves rise floor to ceiling, organized by size, men's on the left, women's on the right, children's on a lower shelf. Each pair is numbered, marked with a size, and he knows them all by sight, can grab the right pair without looking, without hesitation. The system is his own creation, refined over years, and it works perfectly, even on the busiest nights when chaos threatens to overwhelm the counter. He works nights mostly, because that is when the bowling alley is busiest, when leagues come in, when families arrive for Friday night entertainment, when teenagers show up on dates, awkward and excited and trying to impress each other. He greets them all, takes their street shoes, sizes up their feet with a practiced eye, and hands them the rentals, warning them to tie them tight to make sure they fit properly, because loose shoes mean accidents and complaints. The shoes themselves are utilitarian, brown or tan leather with smooth rubber soles designed to slide on the polished approach, and they are cleaned between uses with a spray that smells sharp and chemical and supposedly kills germs, though he suspects it mostly just masks the smell of sweat and old leather. He sprays each pair, wipes them down with a rag, and places them back on the shelf ready for the next customer. The ritual is automatic now, performed hundreds of times each shift, his hands moving, without conscious thought while his mind wanders or engages in conversation. He collects street shoes in return, placing them in numbered cubbies that correspond to the lane numbers, keeping track of who has what, making sure nothing gets mixed up. People are particular about their shoes, and he has learned to be careful, to double-check, to avoid the embarrassment of handing someone the wrong pair at the end of the night. He has a system, a method that has been refined over years, and it works, keeping everything organised even during the busier Saturday nights when every lane is full and the counter is 3 deep with people waiting. During slow moments, he cleans, organising the shoes, checking for damage, pulling aside pairs that need repair or replacement. He examines the soles, looking for worn spots that might cause someone to stick instead of slide, checking the laces, the eyelets, the stitching. When he finds a pair that is too damaged to use, he sets it aside, fills out a requisition form, and the manager orders replacements, though that process can take weeks, and in the meantime he makes do with what he has, sometimes cannibalizing parts from one damaged pair to fix another. He also handles the register, selling shoe rentals, selling balls if someone needs one, making change, keeping the drawer balanced. It is repetitive work, but he does not mind. There is a rhythm to it, a steady flow that keeps him busy without overwhelming him. He likes the noise of the bowling alley, the crash of pins, the rumble of balls, the cheers and groans of bowlers, the music playing over the speakers. It creates a kind of cocoon of sound that is comforting in its consistency, a background that makes the silence of his apartment, when he finally goes home after midnight, feel almost unbearably quiet. He knows the regulars, recognizes them as they walk in, remembers their sizes, sometimes their names, and they appreciate it. Appreciate being remembered, being treated like more than just another customer. He jokes with them, asks about their game, congratulates them when they bowl well, sympathizes when they do not, and this small human connection is part of what makes the bowling alley feel welcoming, feel like a community space rather than just a commercial enterprise. The league bowlers are especially loyal, coming in every week at the same time, wearing their team shirts, carrying their own balls in personalised bags. He knows them all, knows their quirks, their preferences, their stories. He knows which ones are serious competitors and which ones are just here for the social aspect, which ones will tip generously, and which ones will complain about the shoes no matter how well they fit. He knows about their families, their jobs, their lives outside the alley, because over time, standing at this counter, exchanging shoes and small talk, he has become part of their routine, a witness to their weeks, their seasons, their years. He sees families arrive, parents with young children, and he helps them find the smallest sizes, shows them how to tie the shoes properly, offers advice on how to hold the ball, how to approach the lane. He watches the children bowl, their balls rolling slowly down the lane, sometimes making it all the way, sometimes veering into the gutter, and he sees the parents encouraging them, celebrating even the smallest successes, and he feels glad to be part of these moments, these small family traditions that will become memories that will be talked about years from now. There are regulars who come alone, older men mostly, widowers or bachelors, who bowl a few games and then sit at the counter, nursing a beer, talking to him between customers. He listens, offers comments, provides a kind of companionship that they might not have anywhere else, and he understands that for some people, the bowling alley is not just recreation, it is connection. It is community. It is a place where they are known, where they belong. He has worked here long enough to see changes, to watch children grow into teenagers, to see couples meet and marry, to witness friendships form and sometimes dissolve. The bowling alley is a constant in the neighbourhood, and he is a constant within it. The face behind the counter, the person who is always here, always ready with the right size shoe and a friendly word. But bowling is changing, and so are the alleys. Newer facilities are being built, sleeker, more modern, and they have automatic scoring, better lighting, computerized systems, and some of them even have vending machines for shoe rentals, machines that dispense shoes without a clerk, without conversation, without connection. The shoe rental clerk's job is being automated, simplified, reduced to a transaction that requires no human presence, and he watches it happen, knowing that his days are numbered, that soon there will be no one behind the counter to greet the regulars, to remember their sizes, to make them feel like they belong. He wonders what will happen to the people, the regulars who come here not just to bowl but to be part of something, to be recognised, to have a place where somebody knows their name. He wonders if they will keep coming when the counter is empty, when the shoes are dispensed by a machine, when bowling becomes just another automated activity in a world that is increasingly efficient and increasingly lonely. He suspects they will not, that something essential will be lost, something that cannot be measured in efficiency or profit, something that has to do with human connection, with the small rituals that make people feel seen, that make a commercial space feel like a community. The neighbourhood handyman arrives at your door with a toolbox that seems to contain a solution for every household problem, and he surveys whatever has broken with the calm assessment of someone who has fixed 1,000 similar things. He does not specialise, does not limit himself to plumbing or electrical or carpentry, but does all of it, whatever is needed, whatever keeps homes running, and he charges fair prices, works carefully, and takes pride in leaving things better than he found them. He is the person you call when the screen door sags, when the faucet drips, when the shelf pulls loose from the wall, and he arrives promptly, fixes it competently, and refuses to leave until you're satisfied, until the problem is truly solved. His toolbox is heavy, metal, worn at the corners, and it contains a carefully curated collection of tools accumulated over years of work. Screwdrivers of every size, wrenches, pliers, a hammer, a level, a tape measure, wire cutters, a utility knife, and dozens of small items, screws, nails, washers, wire nuts, things he's learned to carry because you never know what a job might require. The toolbox itself tells a story. Every dent and scratch a memory of a job completed, a problem solved, a grateful homeowner thanking him for work well done. He can fix most things with what is in that box, and for the rare occasions when he cannot, he knows where to get the parts, knows the hardware store owner by name, knows which suppliers carry the hard-to-find items. He maintains relationships with these people, trades favours, shares information, because in his line of work, knowing where to find things is almost as important as knowing how to fix them. He works methodically, never rushing, never cutting corners. When your mother calls him about the dripping faucet, he arrives within a day or two, examines the problem, explains what needs to be done, and gets to work. He shuts off the water, disassembles the faucet, replaces the worn washer, reassembles everything, turns the water back on, and tests it, making sure the drip is gone, making sure nothing leaks, making sure the repair will last. He does not consider the job finished until he has tested it thoroughly, until he is confident it will not fail again next week. He talks while he works, not constantly, but enough to be friendly, to explain what he is doing, to educate the homeowner about basic maintenance. He believes that people should understand their homes, should know how things work, should be able to do simple repairs themselves, and he shares his knowledge freely, showing your mother where the shut-off valve is, explaining how to replace a washer, suggesting that she keep a few spare washers on hand for next time. He is generous with his expertise, understanding that an informed customer is a better customer, that teaching people to help themselves does not threaten his livelihood, but rather builds trust and respect. He does not overcharge, does not pad his hours, does not recommend unnecessary work. His reputation is built on honesty, on competence, on being someone people can trust, and he guards that reputation carefully. He knows that in a neighbourhood, word spreads quickly, that a satisfied customer tells a few people, but a dissatisfied customer tells everyone, and he makes sure that every job, no matter how small, is done right. His business card sits in kitchen drawers throughout the neighbourhood, passed from neighbour to neighbour, recommended at church gatherings and over backyard fences, his name synonymous with reliability. He is older, probably in his 50s or 60s, and he's been doing this work for most of his life, learning from his father, picking up skills on the job, figuring things out through trial and error. He can look at a problem and see the solution, can visualize how things fit together, how they work, how they break, and how to fix them. It is a kind of practical intelligence that cannot be taught in schools, that comes only from experience, from years of working with your hands, from solving problems in the real world, from developing an intuition about materials and forces and the ways things fail. He takes pride in his work, not in a boastful way, but in a quiet, satisfied way. When he finishes a job, he stands back, examines his work, nods to himself and packs up his tools. He accepts payment with a thank you, offers a receipt written in pencil on a small pad, and reminds your mother to call if anything else needs fixing, if the repair does not hold, if she has any questions. He means it too. He wants people to call him back if something is not right, because his pride depends on doing good work, on leaving satisfied customers, on building a reputation that will sustain him. His jobs are varied, and that is what he likes about the work. One day he is replacing a broken window pane, carefully removing the old glass, measuring and cutting new glass, setting it in place with glazier's points and fresh putty. The next day he is fixing a sticking door, planing down the edge that rubs, adjusting the hinges, oiling the hardware until it swings smoothly and latches properly. The day after that he's installing a new light fixture, turning off the power at the breaker box, removing the old fixture, connecting the new one, testing it to make sure it works. The variety keeps the work interesting, keeps him learning, keeps him challenged in ways that specialization never could. He knows how to work with wood, with metal, with plaster, with all the materials that make up a house. He can patch a hole in drywall, replace a broken tile, fix a leaky pipe, install a new outlet, build a set of shelves, hang a door, whatever is needed. He is not a master of any one trade, but he is competent at all of them, and for most household repairs, competent is more than enough. He takes satisfaction in being versatile, in being the person people call first, before the specialists, before the expensive contractors. He carries business cards, simple white cards with his name and phone number printed in black, and he leaves one on the kitchen counter when he finishes a job, a reminder that he is available, that he is reliable, that he is part of the neighbourhood. His phone number is listed in the local directory and people know to call him first before calling an expensive contractor, before trying to fix it themselves and making it worse. But the world is changing, and the neighbourhood handyman is becoming a rarity. People are moving to suburbs, living in newer homes that need fewer repairs, and when something does break, they call specialised contractors, licensed plumbers, electricians, carpenters, people who charge more but carry insurance, who drive trucks with company logos, who represent businesses rather than working for themselves. Liability concerns are growing, building codes are becoming more complex, and homeowners are becoming more cautious, more willing to pay extra for the security of licensing and insurance, even if it means losing the personal touch, the neighbourly relationship, the fair price. The handyman's phone rings less often, his toolbox sits idle more days than not, and eventually he retires, and the neighbourhood loses someone who could fix anything, who charged fairly, who took pride in keeping homes running, one small repair at a time. The knowledge he carries, the skills he has accumulated over a lifetime, they are not being passed down, not being taught to the next generation. Young people are not interested in this kind of work, in the small repairs, the modest income, the lack of prestige. They want careers, not jobs, want specialisation, not versatility, and the generalist handyman, the person who can do a little bit of everything, is fading from the landscape, leaving behind homes that are a little less well maintained, problems that go unfixed a little longer, and neighbours who no longer know who to call when something breaks, who must navigate phone books and websites looking for strangers to invite into their homes, strangers who do not know the neighbourhood, who do not care about reputation, who are here today and gone tomorrow, efficient perhaps, but utterly without connection. So tonight, as you settle deeper into your blankets, think about all the people we have met today, the milkman in the pre-dawn dark, the soda jerk polishing glasses, the elevator operator calling out floors with the rhythm of prayer, the handyman with his worn toolbox, the lamplighter moving through dusk with his long pole and his quiet flame. They did not think of themselves as living in history. They were just working, showing up, doing what needed to be done, and in doing so they stitched a community together, one small act of service at a time. These jobs are gone now, most of them, replaced by machines or efficiency or the simple fact that the world moved on. But the people who did them mattered. They knew your name. They remembered your order. They fixed what was broken and delivered what you needed and made sure the lights came on when darkness fell. They were part of the fabric of daily life in a way that is hard to find now, in a world where so much happens automatically, invisibly, without a human hand. Maybe that is what we can carry forward, not the jobs themselves, but the spirit behind them, the idea that work can be personal, that showing up matters, that knowing someone's name, remembering their preference, taking pride in small things, these are not trivial acts. They are the substance of community. They are what make a place feel like home. So as you close your eyes tonight, let yourself drift back to those quiet streets, those small shops, those moments when someone showed up just to make your day a little easier. Let that feeling settle over you like a warm quilt, like the smell of fresh bread, like the soft glow of a gaslight at dusk. History is not always grand. Sometimes it's just a man on a bicycle, a woman behind a counter, a light being tended in the dark. And that is enough. That has always been enough. Good night, and may your dreams be gentle.